Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.
Cherokee history will be the topic on Read About It tonight. Hi, I'm B.J. Williams. Robert J. Conley will be telling us about his novel, Cherokee Dragons. Susie Beasley will talk with Pauline Rodriguez. Kids Corner will feature Heidi Johnson. We also have Doug Benton, Evelyn Davis, and Bud Munkris. Coming up, Robert Conley.
The following public service program is brought to you by the Metropolitan Library System. And now, Read About It, with your host, B.J. Williams.
Robert Conley has written over 20 novels. His most recent one is Cherokee Dragon. It was entered in the Oklahoma Book Awards, and he was one of the finalists for the 2000 Oklahoma Book Awards. He has won 3 Spur Awards as well. I was able to catch up with him at the banquet for the Book Awards last March, and he told me a little bit about the way he wrote Cherokee Dragon. I think you'll find it quite interesting.
Okay, why did you choose Dragging Canoe?
The short answer is that I was working on a series of Cherokee historical novels beginning in about 1500, and the time came for Dragging Canoe. The longer answer is that I had wanted to write about Dragging Canoe for some time, some years, because the period of the American Revolution is a pivotal time in Cherokee history, and Dragging Canoe was, I think, probably the last great Cherokee war leader. So it was an important book to me to do, and I think it's an important subject that I would like for more people to know about.
I think the very idea that there was anything going on besides the Revolutionary War being fought in what was in essence the coast is something that most Americans, they never hear anything about it.
We of course hear about the Boston Tea Party and the taxation issue and so on and so forth, but the issue, a very important issue that we don't hear so much about, is that the colonists were wanting to move west. And of course the Indian tribes did not want them to move west, and neither did England.
Because England had treaties with most of those tribes, didn't they?
Right, and England wanted to keep the colonies where it could have some control over them, contain them along the east coast. And that's the reason so many of the Indian tribes did ally themselves with Great Britain during the Revolution. A very good reason.
Yeah. Well, a number of them had also allied themselves with Great Britain during the French and Indian Wars and that sort of thing. So I guess with some of them, as I think you may make clear in Cherokee Dragon, that there was this ongoing war relationship. The redcoat would show up and the Indians would go fight.
Yeah, there were. Of course, there were Cherokees who liked the French, and there were Cherokees who liked the English, and the Cherokees who followed Dragging Canoe during the Revolution were a faction of Cherokees. There were others who did not, and who wanted to go the other way, or wanted to stay out of it.
Yeah, I think you make that clear, particularly with Dragging Canoe's father, who had some sympathy for the French and certainly felt that there might be a better way to approach this thing, with talking, with diplomacy, and with treaties. And it might well have worked had any of the white men thought the treaties were worth keeping.
Mm-hmm.
But Dragging Canoe had his suspicions from the start.
Oh, yes, he did. Yeah.
He was a suspicious young man. So, what kind of research do you do before you do one of these books?
I like to say that I don't do any research. I quit being a professor and an academic some years ago, and I swore off all that sort of thing. The truth is that for years and years, I've read everything I could find on Cherokee history and Cherokee culture and whatnot. So, if I'm lucky, I don't have to do any research because I've already done it. Mm-hmm. If I have to dig a little bit, usually I have my own library right at hand. Mm-hmm. And mostly the kind of research I have to do is checking myself, checking dates and checking things like that, because I have already read so much of it.
Like the different times that smallpox seemed to come in and devastate the Cherokee and so on. I found it also interesting the way you portrayed the sort of gradual Europeanization of some aspects of the Cherokees, like the switch. Of course, I was very interested in this switch from a very matrilineal culture to one that was more patriarchal with the white men.
Personally, I feel like that's probably the worst thing that happened to Cherokees throughout history. And in considering the smallpox epidemics and the wars and all of that, but that turning upside down of the family structure, I think was probably the worst thing that happened. With the old matrilineal clan system, there could be no such thing as wife abuse and as child neglect and fighting over children and so on and so forth. And of course today Cherokee families have those problems like any other family. So I think, and that one is still with us, so I think that's the worst thing that happened.
Well, and I think particularly insidious when you are going from a matrilineal clan and then you start throwing in these patrilineal, the kids really belong to the father. In that situation, the kids don't have anything but the father, because if they don't belong to their mother's clan, then the rest of the Cherokee society is saying, well, they don't belong to us either, kind of thing.
There was a period of great confusion there.
Right. Yeah. Just who am I and who am I related to, and why? And I could see that would cause incredible fractures in everything.
Yeah, and I'm sure it did.
But Dragging Canoe didn't have to deal with that when his wife died of the smallpox. I liked that comment in there that his child had as many mothers as his mother had sisters.
And we still see that in Cherokee families. And there may be families that have even forgotten their clan affiliation, but old habits remain with them. So we still see that sort of thing.
That is wonderful staying power, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, you said this is part of a series. Do you have something coming up?
Always another one, yes. The next one is a book called Spanish Jack. And following that, I'm going to do one on the life of Sequoia.
Oh, that'll be neat. I will look forward to that one in particular, because my image of him is just based on the little bit that one learns in school about he was the Cherokee who taught the Cherokees how to write, like he's this really great person. But given the portraits of him I have seen, he was obviously a little bit more complicated than that.
A little bit more complicated, yeah. I think he was running away from white people all his life.
Yeah. That's hard to do in this country, isn't it? So, well, I want to thank you very much for being with us, and I hope that you will come back when your next book comes out.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that. You can find Cherokee Dragon, War Woman, The Peace Chief, and many other of Robert Conley's books at your local library and your favorite bookstore. Coming up next, we have Susie Beasley from the Midwest City Library. She'll be talking with Pauline Rodriguez about a book Pauline really enjoyed.
Pauline, tell us about this book, Female Intelligence by Jane Heller.
Well, the current topic in communications is men's communication style versus women's communication style. So this book is taking kind of a satirical look at that. The main character, Lynn Wyman, is making her living by teaching men how to better communicate with the women in their lives by using feminine communication skills.
Now, does this work?
Well, it seems to. Lynn reminds you a lot of some of the gurus that you see these days, in that she's on TV talk shows, she writes books, she has private practice clients. She really has it all until her own marriage fails and the word gets out, which destroys her credibility, because if she can't communicate enough to keep her own marriage going, she's going to make a comeback.
So, well, how's she going to do this? How is she going to make this great comeback?
Well, she has read in Business Week about this CEO, Fortune 500 CEO, who has a reputation for bullying his staff, and she thinks if she can teach him a kinder, gentler form of communication, she can get lots of free publicity and then redeem herself. She actually gets him as a client with one condition.
What's that?
No publicity.
Okay. But what does she do?
She agrees to do it anyway, and she actually finds herself liking him, and they're actually falling in love.
So, kind of give us an idea. Is this one of those happily ever after, or there's some pitfalls here?
Well, this is Jane Heller. You know it's not going to be that simple. All of a sudden, the media finds out that the CEO is Lynn's client, and everything gets crazy because obviously the CEO thinks that Lynn told them, and Lynn is running around trying to find out who told and why and convince him that she didn't.
Well, how is this communication style thing working?
She's having to learn a lot about her own communication style in the process.
In the whole process. So I know this is not Jane Heller's only book. She's done other works, and I know we have them in the library system, but is this a brand new book?
This is the newest work, and this is one of my favorites. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, I think she wrote Sisba and name dropping and that sort of thing. Well, Pauline, we certainly appreciate you coming and sharing with us Female Intelligence by Jane Heller. This is available at your local library and perhaps your local bookstore. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline and Susie. And now I have a couple of books I'd like to share with you. This first one is A History of Private Life from Pagan Rome to Byzantium. Paul Vane is the editor. This was originally a French series, a very ambitious project to chronicle private life in the West during the past 2,000 years. This first book covers a tremendous amount of territory because it does start with pagan Rome and ends up with Byzantium in the 10th and 11th centuries. So we have pagan Rome, we have the West under the Merovingian and Carolinian kings, and Byzantium, which was the Greek end of the Roman Empire. Quite different concepts about what people were, what their duty to the state, if indeed there was a concept of a state in any of these cultures, and the place of women and children and slaves in each of these. So this book, very ambitious, written by, each one is written by a different author, an acknowledged expert in his field, a truly fascinating look at how our ideas of self and other have changed in the past 2,000 years. Now in Rome, one of the really interesting things about being a Roman citizen, a male citizen, was that if you were 45 years old and were consul for the 2-year period that one could be a consul, if your father was still living, anything you earned, any money you earned, any honors you received, went actually to your father. He gave you an allowance, at least in theory, to live on. And if your father said, I don't like the woman you're married to, you have to divorce her, and I picked out somebody else that you're going to marry, according to Roman law, you would have to go along with that. Your father, until he died, controlled everything you did. Now, the only way a woman could get out from under that would be to marry, and then, of course, her husband took over. Now, this book does not really look at Greek civilization because the authors feel that the Roman Empire sort of subsumed the whole ideas of Greek culture, and so by looking at pagan Rome, we're looking to a certain extent at Greece. And it is quite an interesting look at people who felt that there was a public life, a public role to play, education was public, and people had a place in the public domain as well as the private domain. When the Roman Empire fell apart and the Merovingian and Carolinian people came in and created their own kingdoms, public life really disappeared. Everything was private. The state was private. The king owned his kingdom in a way that a Roman emperor couldn't understand at all. The kingdom was the king's just the way his horses and his dogs and his gold and his silver were, and he left them in his will any which way he pleased because they belonged to him personally. It was not a public thing that would continue after him unless he left it in a will. This was also a period of really great ideological battles between the pagan ideas of the Franks who had come in and the church, which was trying to civilize them and really get rid of all of these superstitions and general beliefs. So a great deal of tension between the people and the church in this period. In Byzantium, of course, everybody was definitely Christian, but there was still, the church felt, a great deal of work to do to make everybody conform to Christian ideas. A fascinating book, one that will take you actually a little while to read, but will be quite enjoyable. On the last book that I have to talk about, it is In Her Footsteps, 101 Remarkable Black Women from the Queen of Sheba to Queen Latifah. It's put together by Annette Madden. I think most of us think of FloJo or Eartha Kitt or Shirley Chisholm or even Queen Latifah, but there are a lot of other women that were very active in history that we don't know anything about. This is a delightful book to look through and find some of those little known facts about really active and admirable women to look up to. Coming up next is Kids Corner, and Heidi Johnson has a couple of books just for our very youngest readers. Hi Heidi, what have you got for us tonight?
First book I have is called The Very Lazy Ladybug. She's this very fat, lazy ladybug who just loves to lay in the sun and sleep all day. And so she doesn't want to fly. So she's looking for a comfortable ride. And well, she finds the bear, except the bear scratched too much.
Oh dear.
Then she tried the monkey, and the monkey made her dizzy because he liked swinging from tree limb to tree limb. She tried hitching a ride with the alligator, but he kept swishing his tail and she was afraid she'd fall off into the water. So nobody was really perfect when it came to that. Toward the end, she runs across the elephant and she thinks, oh, this is perfect. He doesn't scratch, he doesn't roar, he doesn't swish his tail. About that time, the elephant sneezes.
Oh no.
And sneezes the ladybug all through the air, and she finally has to fly after all.
Oh dear, oh dear.
The next book I brought along is called What's So Scary? And I think it's a clever story, and children should have hours of fun with looking at the pictures. It starts off by this little dog, who's the narrator of the story, telling us that he got drawn into this story by mistake. This crazy illustrator who is overworked and has not had enough sleep just drew him there by mistake, and he's lost and he doesn't know what part of the story is at. Then the illustrator falls over his paint bucket and a mountain of paint is after everybody in the story, trying to drown him out. There is an elephant, there is an octopus, a giraffe who becomes seasick in this picture, by the way. We have an alligator, we have, dogs, birds.
The hare and the tortoise are there.
Oh yes, and so many animals from so many different stories. Anyway, they all have their little comments on each page. Everybody has their own comment to the story, what's going on, but this crazy illustrator is trying to drown them. And they're all trying to make it toward the end of the story. They're all speculating, what's going to happen at the end? Will I need a toothbrush? Are we going to fall over the edge? What will be happening when we get to the end? And the illustrator's still madly in pursuit. You see him making comments periodically, and you see his boots as he falls down somewhere. At the very end, the animals finally take matters into their own hands. The dog grabs the paintbrush from the illustrator, draws the rest of the story, where everybody safely lands in the story they were supposed to start out of anyway.
Great. Thank you very much, Heidi.
You're welcome.
And these books can be found at your library and your favorite bookstore. It's time now for the New York Times bestseller list. We'll start out with hardback fiction. Number 10 on that list is 7 Up by Janet Ivanovich, A Traitor to Memory by Elizabeth George, The Jury by Steve Martini, P is for Peril by Sue Grafton, Open Season by Linda Howard, Leap of Faith by Danielle Steele, The Fourth Hand by John Irving, Any Way the Wind Blows by Lynn Harris, Cane River by Lolita Tademi is number 2, and number 1 is Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas by James Patterson. On the nonfiction hardback list, number 10 is In Harm's Way by Doug Stanton, The Truth Is by Melissa Etheridge with Laura Morton, Napalm and Silly Putty by George Carlin, Seabiscuit by Laura Hillenbrand, Founding Brothers by Joseph Ellis, Justice by Dominic Doon, Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom, Ghost Soldiers by Hampton Sides. Number 2 is Stolen Lives by Malika Oufkir and Michelle Fitoussi. John Adams by David McCullough is number 1. On the children's list, number 10 is Jurassic Park 3, adapted by Scott Simpson. Junie B. Jones is A Graduation Girl by Barbara Park. Sure Thing by Judy Katchke. Quidditch Through the Ages by Kenilworthy Wisp. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. Holes by Louis Sekar. The Princess Diary by Meg Cabot. The Case of the Dog Camp Mystery by Judy Katchke. Number 2 is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. And number 1 is Rowling's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Coming up next, we have Doug Benton from the Metropolitan Library System and the Oklahoma Gazette. He'll be talking with Evelyn Davis, also from the library, and they have a book they'd like to share with you.
I'm Evelyn Davis with the Metropolitan Library System, and for 15 years as colleagues, Doug and I have had the strange and wondrous experience of many literary arguments, and we decided to take it to the public so they too could have the benefit of our
for their sins
of our interaction. And he has chosen a book about Mickey Spillane, who is a name from our past. You don't hear much about him anymore.
No.
And why are you bringing him up again?
Why am I bringing him up again? Actually, this book is not about Spillane. It is a collection of the first 3 Mike Hammer novels he wrote.
Okay.
This started in the late 40s, it moved into the early 50s. For those of you who don't remember Mickey Spillane, he was a detective story writer, mystery writer, who became very popular after the Second World War. In fact, there was a time in the 1960s when 7 of the 10 best-selling novels of all time were Mickey Spillane titles. Okay, I mean, he was that popular.
Very impressive.
Very, very impressive. He wrote in sort of in the school of Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, the hard-boiled kind of thing. But Spillane was a lot more hard-boiled than either Hammett or Chandler. There are times when I first started reading Spillane when I was younger, I thought, Mike Hammer was not so much a tough guy character as he was absolutely psychotic.
He probably makes Robert Parker look like a romance writer.
Yeah, he does. Well, you go back and you read the books now. I mean, they're 50 years old, and they don't have quite the same punch at that level that they did then.
Do they sound dated?
In some ways they do. There are a few books that where Mike Hammer is combating the communist menace, the Red Scare menace books, and so those are pretty dated. But I think the reason to reread Spillane now, or to find him for the first time, is that he was really a very good writer. I mean, his books, the action is so fast, it's so brutal, it's so in your face that reviewers at the time kind of wrote him off as just being a guy who did slam bang action kind of pulp stuff. But the fact is that if you can write action well, you're writing well. I mean, it's hard to do because action is it's kinetic. It doesn't lend itself well to being written about.
So you have a more favorable assessment of Spillane than the critics did.
Yeah, very, very much so. I think he was in absolute control of what he was doing. Again, the prose seemed so red hot and so fast paced at the time that you get the impression easily, I think, that he was just writing. Boom, it came into his head, he put it down. But I think he knew exactly what he was doing. He seems so prolific because he sold so many books. He only wrote 13 Mike Hammer novels, starting in 1947. So that's not a huge outlet. He knew what he was doing. He took his time.
Well, it's good to see his name in print again.
It is.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Evelyn and Doug. I have with me now Bud Bunkris. He is a local attorney and he really likes to read, and he's brought a great book for us today. And what is it that you've brought?
This is Let Heroes Speak by Michael Rosov. It's published by the Naval Institute Press.
And what's it about?
Dr. Rosov has written a book about early exploration in Antarctica, beginning with Captain Cook and going down through the explorations of the teens and up to about 1922.
I didn't realize that Captain Cook, did he actually stop and try to find out what it was he was sailing by?
Well, that's an interesting question. It occurred to me in reading this book that people for a long, long time, and I'm talking about going back to classical antiquity, sort of assumed that there was a great southern continent, and you see references to the great southern continent in writings about that part of the world. People didn't have any good reason to actually believe in its existence any more than they had a reason to believe that there was some great northern continent. And of course, as we found out a long time ago, there is no continent at the North Pole, no landmass there. But of course, the continent of Antarctica is very real, and about the size of the United States and Mexico put together. In the early days, the early explorers, Cook and the sealers and the whalers, who first went to that part of the world, really were frequently uncertain as to whether or not they were seeing a landmass. There was great controversy over this for many years in the early days, and people disputed whether the continent actually existed. Sightings were discredited, the explorers argued among themselves, and so on.
Well, then what happened when they decided there really was a continent down there?
Well, it was of great interest scientifically. It was of great interest to people who wanted to exploit the resources there, and there are resources there. For instance, in the modern era of Antarctic exploration, which is not covered in Dr. Rosov's book, the early flyers who flew over the continent identified huge coal deposits. And of course, to this day, nobody really knows what might be there in terms of petroleum and so forth. But the Antarctic Treaty prohibits economic exploitation of the continent. So we may never know whether there's any whether there are assets there in economic quantities.
Okay, but there are some people down there doing what, mostly scientific experiments, that sort of thing?
Yes, of course, the Navy has established a permanent presence in the Ross Sea at the McMurdo Station, where I was, as a matter of fact, for a couple of years. I was a Navy pilot and did 2 tours in Antarctica, flying C-130s with giant skis on them.
So you were a little bit better equipped for this Antarctic visit than some of the explorers that I'm sure Dr. Rosov wrote about.
Oh yeah, I was no less intrepid though. I'm sure that if this book didn't stop in 1922, the last half of it would just be all about me. Actually, we used to fly over territory which tracked the routes, only coincidentally because we were all trying to get to the South Pole. But our trip there was a matter of a few hours. Comfort and air-conditioned, climate-controlled, the cockpit environment. But I used to look down over the Beardmore Glacier and just think about how incredibly courageous these people were who made that trek on sledges and on foot. It's unbelievable.
What they had to do was import the dogs, the sledges. They had to take all of their own food for the trip out and the trip back, too, didn't they?
Yes. If you're an animal lover, you might not find that part of the story particularly attractive. The Norwegian Amundsen, who was very unsentimental, very hard, and very efficient, managed to make the trek by feeding his dogs to the other dogs. So his plan was to get back, I guess, with one skinny dog, which is kind of the way it happened.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being with us, and would you tell us again the title of the book?
This is by Michael Rosov. He's a cousin, by the way, of a local attorney, Art Bay, who recommended the book to me. So if you want to read this book, you can get it from Naval Institute Press or from Art Bay. So call Art. Dr. Rosov is on faculty of UCLA.
Thanks very much. We'll see you again next week.